Alongside with the author and the Mail on Sunday columnist Peter Hitchens and the co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Welcome back, everybody. These new policies, they are being pulled out of a hat like nobody's business. The latest one today we've seen. Did you go to university? Do your kids, grandkids go to university? And if so, did you find it worthwhile? Because the Tories today are focusing on what they call Mickey Mouse degrees. They're having absolutely none of it. They want these universities to be able to scrap these courses and use that money instead to invest in 100,000 more apprenticeship schemes. I've got to say, you heard earlier on from Olivia Utley, Rishi Sunak did come a bit unstuck earlier on when he was asked to define an example of a Mickey Mouse degree, and he struggled a little bit. Anyway, Peter Hitchens, what do you make to it all?
Well, I have been two things. I've been a student and I've been an apprentice. I was an indentured apprentice for 3 years when I first started out in the trade of journalism. I'm all in favour of apprenticeships, and not just in journalism, but the problem with them is you have to have industries for people to be apprenticed to, and I think the reason why the schemes which we have at the moment don't do as much good as they should is because we don't have very much industry into which to apprentice people. I think the Germans do it much better. Students, I have no doubt at all, there are far too many universities and far too many students, and something has to be done about it because people are being encouraged to go into lifelong debt so that they can get qualifications which won't do them much good. If we want an educated population, we should concentrate on making the schools better. And I'm amazed listening when the political obituaries, I know he's not dead, but he's politically closing down, the political obituaries from Michael Gove over and over and over again claim that he's solved the schools problem of this country. He just has not. The education in the schools of this country is still extraordinarily bad. You don't make up for it by keeping people on at school for an extra 3 years at the end, which is what we do under current arrangements. The universities do need to be shrunk. People shouldn't have to get into debt to go to them. If you're really good enough to go to university, the taxpayer should pay for your tuition and for your maintenance while you're there, and you should then pay that back in what you do after you've qualified in the rest of your life. But the idea of hundreds of thousands of people going to enormous debt year after year after year for degrees which in many cases don't change their lives for the better has been a grave mistake. And I'm glad to see some signs in politics that that's coming to an end. Aaron
Bastani?
Yeah, I think the fact that he can't explain what a Mickey Mouse degree is probably something of a problem. You know, I'm from Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And Bournemouth Arts College and University is very famous for animation, computer game design. Now, 20 years ago, that would have been called a Mickey Mouse degree, but actually today, in 2024, computer games are a bigger industry than film. That's now a very valuable degree. So I'm worried about that kind of loose language. If he specifically said these courses at these universities, at least it's something people can agree or disagree with. Mm-hmm. If you look at the most popular degrees for men, for instance, for men, it's business, engineering, computer science, biological sciences, and then social studies. I presume he means some social studies degrees. Women, medicine, business, biological studies, the top three. So this idea that, you know, everybody's doing pointless degrees is simply not true. The most popular degrees are engineering, law, medicine, business. We need those kinds of people with those skills. What I find really...
You don't need to go to university for years on end to study about business. You could get in as an apprenticeship, start at the bottom,
Correct.
Work your way up. Bob's your uncle, you're the CEO before you know it.
Do you think when he says Mickey Mouse degrees, he means business?
No, but you see, I should do his comms for him, because if someone asked me that, what do you mean? I thought he'd already defined what he meant. I thought he meant, and we can debate this premise, because what they're doing is they're basically valuing the degree based on employment opportunities off the back of it, future earning capabilities off the back of it, dropout rates. That's their classification as to if you meet all of those criteria, so you're not getting your earnings, people are dropping out, and your employment prospects are below par, then tick Mickey Mouse degree. That's how we should have answered it. But then that leads me to the interesting question about, is the measure of what constitutes a valuable degree measured on, for example, salaries afterwards, job levels afterwards? Because what if someone came along and said, I want to pay my own fees and I just want to do this for a bit of fun? I'm happy. I won't earn loads of money. I won't go into a top profession, but it'll fulfil me as an individual. I'm not borrowing money on loans.
But, Michelle, universities aren't supposed to be vocational schools anyway. They're supposed to be for higher education. They're supposed to educate an elite, which is capable of serious thought. And they've been changed into semi-vocational schools, especially since John Major began the merger of the polytechnics with the universities and the expansion which Blair then hugely accelerated, they've become something completely different. They've ceased to be universities as we understood them when I was at university. They're not that at all. So the difficulty is not so much that the degrees are Mickey Mouse, as that they're not degrees at all. And in some cases they may be vocationally useful, in some cases they may not, but it's not what they're about. They're far too big, and also they've become rapacious businesses, which rely increasingly on foreign students to keep them going, which pay their vice-chancellors and other senior staff colossal sums of money. And as I say, the people who go to them have to borrow very heavily in ways which make big differences to their future lives to go to them, and are not getting much of a deal in many cases as a result. I think that's obviously wrong. Someone has to do something about it. I don't think talking about Mickey Mouse degrees is the best way of doing it, because, as you say, it's clearly the statement wasn't properly prepared. They should have known that they would be asked that question, what do you mean by a Mickey Mouse degree? They should have had a prepared answer, or they shouldn't have said it.
Yeah, Aaron?
And on the point of apprenticeships, what Peter says is so true. You know, people think of apprenticeships meaning you're going into a big shipyard, or you become a mechanical or an electrical engineer, or, you know, nursing. No, we don't have much industry in this country now, and therefore most apprenticeships aren't what people think. If you look at, for instance, apprenticeships, I think in even 2010, they've gone down from about 500,000 to around 330,000. Every single Prime Minister I can remember for the last 15 years, Gordon Brown, David Cameron, now Rishi Sunak, probably Boris Johnson and Theresa May too, said that we need more apprentices. But look, it's easy to say, if there isn't the industry, then what kinds of apprenticeships are we talking about? I mean, I know people who've done apprenticeships for marketing, and it means work from home 2 days a week and they're on a laptop. And I don't think the average punter out there thinks that's an apprenticeship. You get to know people, get to know the trade, get to know a workplace, get to know the culture.
Germany does it well because they still have a lot of basic industry. Most German cities will have a substantial number of small but flourishing industries in them in which people still work. We've lost that. Or you might say we've destroyed it. We just don't have it. Also, there are companies which refer to what is basically rebadged training as apprenticeships. It isn't really apprenticeship at all. So it looks better than it is in the statistics, as is so often the case.
After the break, I want to talk to you about the NHS strikes. We'll come on to that, so hold your horses. That'll got many of you guys talking today. Also, Aaron, on this apprenticeship thing, I can't help but notice how many job adverts, and I'm not being, you know, disparaging towards certain jobs, but you look at these jobs, you think you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do that, but at the bottom it'll say candidates must have a 2-1 or something. So a lot of employers have this blanket filtering out of people based on having these degrees when they absolutely don't need them. I find that nonsensical. But let me ask you this, because another policy, another one that was pulled out the hat was all about this national service.
Yes.
That was over the weekend. I saw Rishi talking about that again today. He was asked about that. He was in Devon or wherever. All the things that we've just been talking about then, you're saying about people working from home and all the rest of it. Do you think these kind of schemes, this national service thing, is a good idea? That might stop some of those problems.
No, because it would just be run by G4S or Serco. It would be a complete catastrophe. It would lose the taxpayer money. Nobody would turn up for half the stuff. It would just be another scam on the taxpayer. So, you know, and I know people have strong feelings about this. I support it, I'm against it. We don't need to go that deep. You know, it will just be run so catastrophically.
Why?
You know,
Why have you got so little faith?
Because that's what governments do now. Everything is contracted out. As soon as you mentioned Serco, I thought, Serco, Capita, all the others. That's what it would end up as. I don't think there's much danger of it ever actually happening.
Really?
Well, the far more interesting policy, which was announced at roughly the same time, is Keir Starmer's plan to give votes to 16-year-olds, and much more significant, much more likely to happen. I don't know why, the basic rule of war and politics, don't interrupt your opponent when he's making a mistake. When Keir Starmer said votes to 16, he made a grave mistake, which everybody's forgotten because Rishi Sunak then started announcing national service.
Well, did you think votes for 16 is a grave mistake?
No, I support votes for 16, but I support votes for 16 because I think we need to, from a very early age, enable young people to think that they should be active citizens, be politically involved, care about their communities, be deeply invested in those communities. And I don't think that giving them the vote is, you know, a silver bullet for that. But I think that I'm certainly not opposed to it, no.
Do you think there's an element that Labour want this because they know that a lot of young people are more sympathetic to the left than the right, and therefore politically it stands to benefit the likes of the Labour Party more?
Plausibly, but, you know, debates around expanding the franchise in the 19th century, everybody said, well, this will help the left more than the right. And, the Second Reform Act, I think, of the 1860s, Peter will know this better than me, I think that was the birth of working-class conservatives, voting en masse. So people say that, but I wouldn't be so sure. Those people could end up voting Green or, single issues and whatnot. So, no, I don't think so.
It's statistically demonstrated that and the research has been done, that the big divide in British politics is now not class but age. The younger you are, the more left-wing you are. So I don't think there's any doubt that Keir Starmer...
I don't think they'd vote Labour necessarily.
Well, they're not going to vote Tory, that's for sure.
No, that is for sure.
About 1.5 million people would be enfranchised, and quite a lot of them would certainly not vote Tory, and I think he sees that. The interesting thing is that at the same time all this is going on, actually Labour has been instrumental in actually raising the age of consent for other things. For instance, the age of consent for marriage in England went up with Labour's support last year. Labour in 2007 raised the age at which, from 16 to 18, at which you could buy cigarettes. It seems the general view of the left is that you should be making more things harder to do when you're 16. So how they square that you can't get a tattoo till you're 18, even in the army, which can recruit at 16, it's now the case that young soldiers can't go into combat until they're 18. Well, everything is moving in the opposite direction. So for Keir Starmer to be moving things down to 16, you have to ask him, what's his attitude going to be when his children start saying, well, why can't I get a tattoo? Why can't I buy cigarettes and buy a drink in a pub at 16?
Well, there you go. Lots of you getting in touch about this degree situation. Lots of you think that actually the definition of Mickey Mouse versus none is whether or not it contributes to the economy, what you do afterwards. John says, what about scrapping degrees for things like nurses? They should be on apprenticeships. I have a lot of you writing as well. Many of you said about the push to get police officers doing more degree type stuff. You feel that is wrong. I've spoken to you guys about that before. Keep your thoughts coming in all the usual ways. By the way,